I mean, our aggressiveness, our attention to detail, our ability to contest without fouling, to be disciplined, in that area, I thought was huge.
Okay, this is getting absolutely wild. The voices across the basketball world are getting louder. The frustration is boiling over, and people are openly talking about the unthinkable all over social media. Sophie Cunningham fans have officially had enough, and they're making it crystal clear. They want her to stop being silenced by a league that seems far more interested in controlling the narrative than protecting. Its athletes are allowing anyone to have an honest conversation about what's really going on behind closed doors. Sophie recently spoke out about the league, but more importantly, she revealed that she received yet another fineless time for simply talking about Paige Bueckers. We all remember what happened the last time this situation came up. Sophie had her podcast, and during an episode, she openly stated that Paige Bueckers had that blue blood whistle, implying that certain players receive favorable treatment from officials. Long story short, Sophie claimed the WNBA fined her for making those comments. She didn't stop there either. She spoke about Brie Harley and also discussed Caitlin Clark's rehab, revealing the unfortunate news that Clark would be out for the remainder of the season. What's shocking is how quickly this outrage has spread. Fans everywhere are rallying behind Sophie, demanding that she keep speaking her mind. Their reasoning is simple. If the WNBA is going to fine players simply for voicing their opinions, then there's something deeply wrong with how this league operates. At this point, it's not even about basketball anymore. This has turned into a bigger issue, one about free speech and an organization that has completely lost sight of what it means to let its own players speak openly and honestly. The WNBA has officially done it. They've crossed the line by fining Sophie Cunningham over and over again. Every single podcast episode, she's been fined. Every TikTok she's posted, fined. Sophie herself confirmed she's now been fined for the third time because of her podcast. She might actually be the all-time leader in fines in WNBA history. It's almost unbelievable. Sophie Cunningham, the player who has become known as the voice of truth in women's basketball, has now broken her silence about what she calls a systematic campaign to fine her into submission. And her words expose everything wrong with the way the WNBA is currently being run. What began as a few honest comments on a podcast has turned into a full-blown battle over transparency. But here's the thing, Sophie refuses to back down. She's not just speaking for herself. She's speaking for every player who feels like they're not being protected. She didn't hold back when she said they are not protecting their players. Nobody's going to watch this if you're not protecting your star players. You're not protecting your players, period. But particularly your star players. No one's going to watch this. She made it clear that fans tune in to see stars like Caitlin Clark and even Sophie herself. But if the league keeps hanging those same stars out to dry, they're essentially destroying their own product. Nobody's going to watch anymore because they don't protect their players. It's a worthless organization, she added. According to Sophie, the league has no idea how to protect the very athletes who bring in the audience and the revenue. Instead, they seem more focused on collecting fines and maintaining control. Oh man, they're going to moan. Well, you better pay us the money. For what? You can't even protect your star players that draw the eyeballs, Sophie said, clearly frustrated. She went on to explain that nobody wants to watch a league where star players are IC. I've looked constantly injured due to poor treatment and bad officiating. What should have been a simple, straightforward podcast about basketball and life ended up exposing another layer of this ongoing battle between the WNBA and its players. Sophie started her podcast, Show Me Something, with co-host Wes Wilson, thinking it would be a space for open and honest conversation. Instead, she quickly learned that speaking truth to power in the WNBA comes with a heavy price tag. Through this podcast, Sophie has become one of the top 5 most talked about players in the league. Clips from the show have been circulating everywhere, sparking conversation and controversy. Her personality shines through, strong, bold, and unapologetically authentic. Some fans even see her as a kind of spicy villain, a role she seems to enjoy playing. On her latest episode, Sophie revealed, "I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA. You could hear the frustration and exhaustion in her voice. She explained that the league didn't like her comments about Paige Bueckers, even though, in her opinion, she didn't say anything truly negative. But this time, there's a twist. Sophie isn't backing down. She's decided she will not be silenced by fines that feel more like intimidation tactics than legitimate disciplinary actions. With each new podcast episode, she faces another financial penalty, raising serious questions about whether honest discussion is even possible in today's WNBA. This situation is no longer just about Sophie Cunningham. It's about every player who wants to speak freely without fear of punishment. It's about fans who want transparency instead of carefully controlled narratives. And it's about a league that risks alienating its biggest stars and most passionate supporters by choosing control and censorship over honesty and protection. And I'm officially 3-for-3 on being fined by the WNBA, Sophie Cunningham announced with raw frustration. You could hear the disbelief in her voice as she continued, "Holy. For the pod again. They didn't like my comments on Paige Bueckers." Her co-host was stunned. "No way. You didn't even say anything bad." Sophie shook her head in disbelief. "Yeah, but apparently even mentioning Paige's whistle is a problem now. Like, why? We were literally just talking about how she gets a quick whistle. That's it. Nothing negative, nothing disrespectful." The outrage over this reached a whole new level when it was revealed that Sophie was fined for simply saying Paige Bueckers gets favorable calls. That's it. No personal attacks, no wild accusations, just an observation that every fan has probably made at one point or another. It's honestly one of the most ridiculous fines we've ever seen in professional sports. But then, a plot twist no one saw coming. What happened next was unprecedented in WNBA history. Within days of Sophie revealing the league's fine structure and how often she was being hit with penalties, fans rallied behind her like never before. They weren't just supporting Sophie as a player, they were standing with her as a truth teller. Someone willing to speak honestly, no matter the cost. Social media absolutely exploded with support. Fans began calling her the voice of truth, demanding that the WNBA stop trying to silence players who refused to fit into the league's carefully controlled narrative. Hashtags were trending, posts were going viral. And the message was clear. People are tired of being fed corporate spin and half-truths. When Sophie finally addressed this relentless pattern of fines that had followed every single podcast episode, she didn't sugarcoat a single word. She cut through all the PR garbage like a hot knife through butter. "Something is seriously wrong with how the WNBA enforces its rules," she said firmly. And she's right. There's already been a huge conversation about referee inconsistencies this season. But Sophie's point is even bigger than that. She's exposing the double standard at play. On one hand, it's normal for leagues like the NBA or NFL to fine players if they directly trash talk the league or its officials. That's part of maintaining professionalism. But on the other hand, why is the WNBA so selective about what it enforces? Why does the league turn a blind eye when players are standing over opponents, cursing them out in front of the whole world? Or when an entire team gangs up to bully a star player like Caitlin Clark? Where's the enforcement then? Why does that behavior get ignored while Sophie gets slapped with a fine for a simple comment about referees doing their jobs? This selective enforcement shows exactly why so many fans are furious. The WNBA clearly picks and chooses when it wants to enforce rules, and that kind of bias destroys trust. Sophie Cunningham's case makes this crystal clear. She isn't being fined for lying or making wild accusations. She's being punished for speaking honestly about officiating and league operations, things that millions of fans are already talking about every single game. The WNBA has essentially built a system where even basic observations result in financial punishment, no matter how accurate or harmless they are. And if you look at the numbers, shocking how systematic this campaign against Sophie has become. A $500 fine for a TikTok where she simply lip-synced a song while referencing referees. a $1,500 fine for comments about officiating inconsistencies on her very first podcast episode, and most recently, another undisclosed fine just for pointing out that Paige Bueckers seems to get favorable calls as a rookie. This is madness. Sophie even explained how the fines are handed down. Do they at least give you a breakdown? Like a document saying, here's the exact quote, here's why you're being fined, and here's how much it's going to cost you. Her co-host asked. Sophie laughed bitterly. Nope, they don't even do that. What happens is they text or email our GM. Then she pulls me aside in front of everyone. By the way, Nen says, hey Sophie, come here. I need to talk to you. And I'm standing there thinking, what did I do now? Then she smiles and says, they're going to fine you again. Like, seriously? I even complimented them. I said officiating is hard. I gave them credit for that. And still, here we are. When you step back and look at the big picture, it's clear what's really happening here. This isn't about protecting the league's image or maintaining professionalism. This is about control. The WNBA has become so paranoid about how it's perceived that it's willing to financially punish its own players for saying things that fans already know are true. Instead of fixing the problems Sophie is pointing out, they've decided to silence her with fines. Even legendary analyst Rebecca Lobo has publicly acknowledged that officiating in the league needs serious improvement. But here's the difference. Lobo is retired and part of the media. She can say it without consequence. Sophie, as an active player, gets crushed for daring to speak the same truth. That's terrifying because it shows how the WNBA has created an environment where players are afraid to speak openly about their own league. Sophie even tweeted about her fines, basically laughing at how absurd the whole thing is and pointing out that maybe, just maybe, the league has bigger issues to deal with than a player giving her honest opinion. And she's not wrong. This season alone, WNBA officiating has been under a microscope. Some of the league's biggest names and most respected coaches have been openly calling for change. Take Angel Reese, for example. After the Chicago Sky lost to the Minnesota Lynx on July 6th, she absolutely unloaded on the officiating. Her exact words, I don't give a you-know-what if I get fined because that stuff is cheap and I'm tired of it. Even WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert was forced to address the issue publicly before the All-Star game. She admitted that the league is working on it and claimed they're taking steps to improve. But clearly, words are all we're getting because the actions don't match. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham continues to take hit after hit, absorbing fine after fine just to tell the truth to her fans. During one podcast episode, she said flat out, you fining me $500 is not going to do anything. And then I'll get fined for saying that. And then I'll get fined for this. And the fines will continue. She's sending a clear message. She understands exactly what the league is trying to do on. She refuses to back down. This isn't a player accidentally stumbling into controversy. This is someone making a conscious decision to prioritize transparency over financial comfort. And fans are responding exactly how you'd expect. Social media has been flooded with comments like, this league is so messed up. Sophie, keep calling out their nonsense. People aren't just standing with Sophie, they're actively turning against the Wunba. They see a league that seems fundamentally dishonest, more focused on silencing dissent than actually solving problems. The irony. These fines are tiny compared to what players in other leagues deal with. They're talking about $200 here, $500 there. Sophie Cunningham isn't making millions like NBA stars, but it's not about the money, it's about the principle. This is bigger than basketball. This is about a league willing to punish truth-tellers instead of fixing the broken systems they keep exposing. And as Sophie's case makes clear, fans are done staying quiet. Fans are done staying quiet. No. Sophie keeps doing the exact same thing, and they keep coming after her for it, slapping her with fine after fine. She literally said Paige has a good whistle. That's it. That's what she said. She also joked, Paige fans, oh my god, Paige fans are wild. And for that, the WNBA came down on her like a hammer. But let's step back for a second and really talk about this because The sheer stupidity of the WNBA's approach here is mind-blowing from a business perspective. Sophie Cunningham has become one of the most engaging personalities in women's basketball. She's got a massive social media following. Her podcast has become must-listen content. And fans are tuning in like crazy because they're starving for authentic voices from inside the league. Instead of celebrating this and leaning into what Sophie brings to the table, the WNBA has decided to treat her like a problem, something to be managed, silenced, and controlled. It's the clearest sign yet that the league has no clue how to handle authentic, player-driven content. The contrast between how the WNBA operates and how other professional leagues handle similar situations is embarrassing. Look at the NBA. Sure, players get fined when they criticize officials, but those fines are proportionate to their massive salaries. And the comments usually have to be truly inflammatory to even warrant a penalty. In the WNBA, players are fined hundreds or thousands of dollars for saying things that wouldn't even raise an eyebrow in any other context. But here's the most disturbing part of this whole saga. It's not just about Sophie being fined. It's about the culture of fear the league has created. Multiple sources have confirmed that other players share Sophie's exact concerns about officiating and league operations. But they're too terrified to speak publicly because they've seen what happens to players who dare to open their mouths. And let's be real, this feels like a targeted campaign. Sophie isn't going on wild rants. She's not spewing hate or disrespect. She's speaking honestly and sharing her perspective on her own platform. But the league is treating her like she's committing some unforgivable sin. Remember, she even got hit with an earlier $500 fine for a TikTok video where she was just mocking referees with lip syncing. It was literally a joke, something fans loved because it was funny and relatable. And the WNBA still couldn't handle it. So here's the question. Should Sophie be allowed to say what she wants on her own podcast? Should she have the freedom to speak her truth? Or should she just shut it all down and play nice to avoid making the league uncomfortable? Here's the reality check. Sophie's fans have options now. They don't have to rely on the WNBA's sanitized PR spin anymore. They'll follow her wherever she goes because they crave authenticity and honest commentary about the league they love. The question isn't whether fans will keep supporting Sophie. They will, without a doubt. The real question is whether the WNBA can survive the massive reputational damage it's inflicting on itself. By trying to silence its most authentic and relatable voice, Sophie Cunningham has become more than just a player. She's become a symbol of resistance, someone who's willing to absorb financial penalties just to tell the truth. And that alone should terrify the league office because it highlights exactly how broken their system is. When fans are celebrating a player more for speaking truth than for her on-court performance. When social media explodes in support of someone facing fines instead of celebrating league milestones. And when honest commentary is treated like a liability instead of a marketing asset. It's clear that WNBA has completely lost the plot. One of Sophie's recent podcast episodes went crazy viral, with so many people tuning in and sharing clips that fans were joking she could pay off her fines just from her YouTube monetization. That's how much traction she's generating. And here's the thing, this should have been a golden opportunity for the WNBA. Player-led media is the future. Fans want to hear directly from the athletes, from the people who live the game every day, not just from outside commentators or league-approved talking heads. Instead, the WNBA is penalizing her for doing exactly what modern fans want, pulling back the curtain and showing the real, unfiltered experience of being a player. It's beyond ridiculous. The league has essentially turned what should have been a showcase of authenticity into a cautionary tale about censorship and control. Sophie Cunningham's Show Me Something podcast could have been a powerful marketing tool, deepening fan engagement and offering valuable insights straight from the source. But instead of supporting this, the WNBA is spiraling into paranoia. Every episode of Sophie's podcast triggers even more fear from the league office about what she might say next. Their response has been completely tone-deaf, more focused on controlling the message than fixing the actual issues she's raising. And this selective enforcement is impossible to ignore. For example, Angel Reese publicly said some players get a special whistle when talking about Caitlin Clark no fine. Kelsey Plum has literally stopped entire press conferences to complain about officiating no fine. Stephanie White didn't get fined when she went off about referees after Marina Mabrey knocked Caitlin Clark to the floor no fine. But Sophie, she mentions Paige Bueckers' quick whistle, and boom, here comes another fine. That's not accountability. That's targeted punishment. Through it all, Sophie has remained composed and thoughtful, even while being punished over and over. She's not screaming or being reckless. She's calmly pointing out what's happening in front of everyone's eyes. But let's be honest, no one should have to take this many financial hits just to be truthful with their fans. The writing is on the wall. Fans are openly backing Sophie. Media personalities are questioning the league's priorities. And other players are quietly watching to see if honest discourse is even possible in today's WNBA. Meanwhile, the league leadership seems completely blind to how bad this looks. They actually believe silencing Sophie will somehow help their brand, when in reality, it's destroying trust and alienating their most loyal fans. Sophie has given the WNBA something they didn't even realize they were missing: a raw, brutally honest voice, willing to shine a light on what's really happening. But even the most dedicated truth teller can't fix a broken culture on her own. She can't change an organization that sees honesty as a threat instead of an asset. She can't force transparency on leadership that's determined to control every single narrative. And here's the kicker: every time they find Sophie, it only makes her voice louder. It draws more fans to her podcast, more brands who want to partner with her, and more attention to the exact issues the league is trying to hide. For those who don't know, Sophie plays for the Indiana Fever. She's on the inside, living this reality every single day. And she's brave enough to bring those conversations to the forefront, pushing for real change in a system that desperately needs it. Here's the tragic irony in all of this. The WNBA had everything they could ever want in Sophie's podcast: an authentic voice from inside the league, compelling content that drives real engagement, conversations that fans actually care about. But instead of embracing it, they've chosen to crush it. What we're watching isn't just about fines or podcasts. It's about whether the WNBA wants to be a league that celebrates authenticity or one that destroys it. And right now, the choice they're making speaks volumes. And trust me, fans are paying very, very close attention. Very, very close attention.